$8,000 a year, any idea what type of affordable housing benefit they would be entitled to, or like any example that you may have?
Hard to say because I don't know what their adjusted family net income would be.
So adjusted would be?
It looks at line 236 of everybody in the household added up. And then we look at 30% of that divided by 12.
Okay, so if their income,
because we look at their monthly.
So let's say it's $2,500 a month.
I'm seeing the feed up now, so I'm just gonna wait for Sheldon to give us the go-ahead, Mayor Panko, and we can start where we left off, but I'll just wait for him to give us the go-ahead. But it's I'm seeing it on Facebook now.
Yeah, you're good now. I just double checked it. For some reason, it dropped the connection.
Okay, thank you. Well, can we just resume, or do you want us to count down?
No, you're good. You're live.
Perfect. Mayor Panko, it's back to you.
Okay, my apologies. We had a technical issue, which our video dropped out, but we're back up and running again. So Emily, I'll let you pick up where you left off.
So maybe I'll just talk about that calculation a little bit with some clarification. So we take average market rent, which is predetermined. In most areas, that is set by CMHC. That's not the case for Lanark County. We work with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing to determine that ourselves locally based on advertised rental units. The reason it's not set by CMHC is our sample size for rental is too small to give what a statistician would consider as an accurate capture of data. So how it works is we look at 80% of average market rent, and then we subtract the monthly average family net income of 30, and we look at 30%. So we subtract 30% of their monthly average family net income. So it doesn't.
Okay, so if the rent was $1,000, if the average market rent was $1,000,
we look at 800, and then if 30% of their
income is less than $800 a month, there could be a subsidy which would narrow that gap.
Right.
Okay.
So the average payment that we had for, let me just look, sorry, the municipally funded portable housing benefit last year was $271, and the average payment for the National Housing Strategy, the provincially and federally funded one, was $263. So it's just that group was had a slightly lower payment based on their calculations. So I could say average payment locally would be between $260, $270.
Okay.
And those payments are paid directly to the household.
Now, you mentioned there are currently about 60 of those available across the county.
Oh, yeah.
And so the towns, they've got a discussion on the town. So those who both watching, I guess, the town contributes towards Lanark County housing based on a shared services agreement between the town and the county. And in essence, I think we pay about 8%, a little over 8% of the total Lanark County housing budget based on weighted assessment. As well, I guess the same holds true for land ambulance, for the administrative cost of Ontario Works, I believe, and a number of other elements where the county provides all the administrative work for some of the programs that are available to citizens of our community. So, so we are in some ways, if the total, and I think you mentioned before, the total amount of money contributed towards the portable housing benefit was around $160,000 a year.
Yeah, it's hard to determine exactly how much for that program because there's one pot for sure, $160,000 dedicated to it. The way that we've increased spaces is as people have dropped, we have a hard time keeping landlords in the rent supplement program. So as landlords drop off from that program, we've replaced with rent supplement, and those are still funded under that stream. So it's maybe closer to 200,000.
Okay, so if it's at 200,000, I guess, and our share would be around $16,000 a year towards those.
That's right.
So Emily, are we ready for some questions?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, hopefully I'll be able to answer them all.
Well, Ellie's got her hand up. I'll let Ellie go first.
Yeah, I just have a question in regards to kind of the different supports that are available. So are people able to apply to like the rent supplement application, or has that been completely taken over? I guess I was under the impression that had been completely taken over by the portable housing benefit, or are there still the 3 different ones?
So there's a number of different ones I could say. There is still a rent subsidy happening. It's funded under the investment in affordable housing, but it is phasing out. It was funded in a joint partnership with provincial and federal, and we report to the province with it, but it is being phased out and replaced by that COB program.
Okay, so like people aren't able to apply for that one. They would just apply for COB now.
Yeah, typically. Now there could be new people that get added to it, because if someone dropped out of the program, so are no longer eligible, let's say because their income went up or, you know, some other life change, then we would replace those people with someone new. But we don't necessarily maintain a wait list for it because it is phasing out.
Okay, and then so that kind of leads directly into my next question. What is the wait list for the portable housing benefit and the Canadian Ontario housing benefit?
Right. So we do take people off the subsidized wait list. So they would apply to like rent geared to income housing. And that is where people come for the portable housing benefit. So how it works for spaces becoming available at COB is we get a replenishment of funding from the province in April 1st. So that will open up more spaces there. And then the portable housing benefit, we opened spaces in January, but there won't be new spaces open again until the next stream of funding it, which I believe is 2023. Yeah, 2023. Sorry, I had to think about that. Now, what happens too is sometimes people become ineligible when we do those annual updates, or they happen to move out of the county and then they no longer qualify. So we would replace those spaces randomly throughout the year as well.
Okay, and so I mean, I'm assuming though that we don't have we've got about 700 people who are waiting for subsidized housing. I'm assuming not all of them though are keen to, you know, be removed from the housing wait list and put onto a PHB or a COHB. So, you know, do we know how many people are actually just waiting for the COB or the portable housing benefit? Like if someone was to call up and say, hey, I'm interested in this rent supplement.
We don't necessarily know how many people are waiting for that specific program, no.
And so would people, sorry to get kind of technical about it, but would people then have to kind of, you know, call up weekly to find out about that? Or would they be informed, hey, space is opened up, or how would that go about?
Yeah, we wouldn't ask people to call weekly. We don't even tell people what number they are on the wait list, because with priorities, it doesn't necessarily mean something, an amount of time, right? So when a space becomes available, we contact the people on the list.
Okay, so there is a wait list then that people can ask to be put on. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Is that it, Ellie, for now? Thank you. Lorraine?
Yeah, my question, Emily, is you alluded to that some landlords, it was hard to keep the landlords in the program. Do you have a suspicion or an inkling why that's the case?
So that is the rent supplement program you're referring to.
Right.
And it's hard to know exactly, but most landlords, what they tell us when they exit, and none of them have made anybody homeless. They've not evicted people. It's that tenant has moved and then they choose not to refill it with someone on the wait list because they're able to rent it to a tenant of their choice. So a lot of landlords have a lot of people lining up for their rental units, so then they can pick their tenant. Whereas a landlord in the rent supplement program has to house the person that is next on our wait list. So landlords have definitely in that program not, evicted people, but they've not re-signed up new tenants. So when that happens, County Council approved this year that we could replace it with the portable housing benefit if we're unable to find another landlord.
So one of the nice features of the affordable housing benefit is it's far more discreet. If someone qualifies for it and they find their unit, the money's being paid to them. So the landlord isn't necessarily aware that they're eligible for that, and part of the rent they're paying will be supported by the PHB. Vicky?
Years ago, I had to utilize this program, and what ended up happening was I went on board and all that, and I took it towards my landlord. The landlord refused to accept it. He didn't want to be provided any money, which is acceptable. It's fine, I guess. But my fear is then that probably kicked me off the housing list, which thankfully I no longer need. But does that happen to people a lot? Do they kind of get screwed in a way?
So that was a different program, potentially that you're referring to. The portable housing benefit only started in 2019. The program that we had before was a rent support. So that investment in affordable housing program that I mentioned is phasing out. That program was paid directly to landlords. So landlords could choose not to participate with us. And in that program was originally designed for people on the wait list to help make your rent more affordable while you were waiting for social housing. So this program is a different concept in that the landlord is completely kept out of it. As Mayor Panko said, they're not even aware that you may be, their tenant is receiving a rent subsidy. It's paid directly to the client, so the landlord's not out of it. But one of the stipulations with it is that you are removed from the wait list, which is different than the program that we had before.
So Emily, we're trying, so I think as I mentioned to you and we talked previously, so the group is trying to determine if we want to take a recommendation to council to consider some form of rent support. And your guidance suggests a portable housing benefit would likely be the most appropriate method of doing so. Recognizing that there are currently about 100, 105 of these current supporting families or individuals across the county. And there is a fairly considerable investment in it now, but when you break that down on a per capita basis or a per household basis, it's fairly modest. And recognizing within our community, according to the 2016 census, and that's the only data we have to work with. We don't yet have the updated census data. We won't have it until probably second quarter of next year, I understand. We have about 42% of our individuals earned incomes of less than $30,000 a year. So I mean, about two people together in a family unit, two people at 30 wouldn't qualify for affordable housing benefit based on these formulas, of course, but quite a significant portion of our population would. And we have 335 seniors, 17% of the seniors who would be living below the low income measure. And about 24% of the people 18 to 64 are living below the low income measure, which would be a threshold that would fit them probably within the income thresholds for the PHB based on the size of the unit. So the challenge I think we have is if we did decide to make a recommendation to council, how many of these do we need? And it's, as you mentioned, it's hard to determine how many people out there are sort of waiting to take advantage of a program like this. How many people would benefit immensely from having some degree of rent support? I mean, even if it's $200 to $300 a month, might be the difference between buying groceries and not buying groceries. So I think we recognize there's great merit in this program. The challenge is somewhat quantifying for council what is a suitable amount and what is a suitable subsidy. And you have the formulas which would make sense that we would follow that. And I guess it's suggesting that I think your average you said is around $270 per unit, so a little over $3,000, maybe $3,200 a year. If we said, okay, well, let's do 30 of these, that would be a major increase on what's available currently, but it'd be $100,000 cost to the town. So I guess I want to open it up, and I guess while Emily is here to provide some guidance and answer some questions, I think I want to go jump right ahead in our agenda to this discussion so that we're not keeping Emily around all day. The thoughts, comments, and Vicky, I turn to you. I want you to put your hands up because you're really the one who I think started us on this discussion, and not just started. I think you were making sure we kept the discussion going until we come up with something. So Vicky, it's over to you.
I was pushy. You can say it. It's okay. But it's okay. I really appreciate this. My question would be, or no, not my question. My thought would be, is if it's 100,000, I really think that's peanuts in the bucket compared to what we probably spent in housing people in hotels currently and in the past. I know pandemic money has helped with that, thankfully, but like every single day I see people in tents, RVs. I know people in my building having to go in an RV soon, like before Christmas. It's getting so bad. So I desperately think that it's peanuts compared to the mental health, the well-being of every citizen that we care about in Smith Falls. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicky. Courtney?
So I just want to say, like, I have a PHB myself right now, like I'm receiving one. And if it were not for that, I wouldn't be in.
It appears my internet's frozen.
I would be like out on the street, the situation I was before. So I think that if we can make something like this happen, we.
Sorry, Courtney, my internet froze there. Do you mind just paraphrasing your comments?
I said I receive a PHB myself right now, and if it weren't for that, I would not be in this apartment right now. I would be in the situation I was at the beginning of the year. Like without that, I would not be in here. So I really think that this is something, if we can do it, we really need to.
Thank you, Courtney. Lindsay?
Yeah, I mean, one comment that Vicky made, which is like, it's just spot on in my opinion. We put 4 people who are on some sort of assistance in our building, and until they move in, they're staying in a hotel, all of them. And I don't know what that nightly cost is, but at least 4 sets of individuals and or families right now are being housed in hotels in hotel rates, and those are just people I've come across and have been dealing with. And so on that point, like, we need to be spending probably $1 million in rent subsidies to not only put on a Band-Aid, but actually start mitigating where we are right now so that people have a long-term solution. But you have to take steps. So whether it's 100,000 or 200,000 being set aside, it's better than nothing. It certainly isn't enough, but it's better than nothing. And then one thing too with an issue that I think a lot of us have maybe spoken about, and I've communicated as well, is there is a lot of stigma when it's, a tenant reaches out to you as a landlord and they go, okay, my caseworker is going to reach out to you. And a lot of landlords are like, and it's for 2 reasons. A, I have to respond. I actually have to put time into responding to that email. And a lot of landlords right now are lazy. And one of the reasons why I feel we have less and less people on the program that Emily was mentioning is because we have a new generation of landlords. A lot of people who were in their 50s up to their 80s who held property in the town, as well as many other cities, have a lot of different values and morals than the younger blood that's coming in right now. So there's a demographic change happening. And unfortunately, a lot of my demographic is filled with lazy people who are very selfish. So, most landlords, when they get that email from a tenant going, my case manager is going to reach out to you. And, they're kind of asking you to help finalize this last step too. There's a little bit of coordination. And so you have to put in the time. And so tenants themselves can just get that subsidy so that they don't have to maybe do that link. I think it will help a lot more tenants get more rental units, because most people of my demographic right now involved being a landlord, they want nothing to do with it because it takes time, it takes energy. They just don't care.
Lindsay, can you share some of your experience as a landlord? I mean, with Phillip Street being a new building,
Yep.
did you have far more applicants than units available?
Yeah, so there's been a few things that I've kind of like put in my head that I wish I had actually mentioned it to Courtney and Vicky before the you guys did your seminar actually. But unfortunately, a lot of tenants do lie, and it sucks because I would actually rather a tenant just say I'm broke and I'm this assistance here, this assistance here. I know I can make it work, but that's all I have, versus lie. So unfortunately, we've had a few tenants lie because they're just trying, but I can't rent to a tenant that lies. It's just, I can't. So I've had to cancel out a lot of tenants because it's not just me. There's people I'm held responsible to as well. So unfortunately, we've had to probably I would say about 20 applications, which really sucks. And I would say we rented out 4 of our units at a much lower rate because we did make that commitment to the town. And I could only put that ad up for literally 4 hours. It was insanity. We rented it out for I think 1,200. And I literally had people Googling me, trying to like find me so that they could just call me. It was insane. So, I mean, when we look at like the need right now, I have probably interacted with over 150 people since advertising Phillip for rent.
Joanne? And then Lorraine.
Yep, I was just going to say that one of the big issues too is that there's no apartments available. And Lindsay just said it. Even though we put into practice and we support the housing subsidy, or however COB, or however we want to address it, if there's no apartments available, or for one apartment you have like he was saying 30 and 40 applicants for that one apartment, for sure landlords are going to go for people that have a job and that have like their income secure, so that they don't have to worry. And it's not always a matter of being lazy. It's accountability. Like if you're a landlord, you also have bills that you have to pay. And if you're a young landlord, you probably have a mortgage and so on. So, it's true. It is changing. Smith Falls is changing. There's a lot more new younger people venturing. But the thing is that there's no apartments available. That is the biggest thing too.
Well, you're right, Joanna. And just to speak to that for a moment, I think between 1996 and that's where the shortage of supply is definitely a big factor, and the growth we're seeing is the other big factor too. But between 1996 and 2016, I think the town had about 35 new rental units added to our inventory. So 2 a year, right? Less than that. Right now, I just checked this week, between last year and this year, between what's been approved by council and what is shortly to be approved by council, there are 387 units on the way. And that's very encouraging. Some of those will be affordable, majority will not be. And of course, we're working on other mechanisms to try and help encourage developers to build affordable through our affordable housing CIP. But the supply, I hope, will help. But again, we can't determine demand. And if more people continue to move here and more people are looking for rental apartments, all those units could be taken very quickly. Now, it's encouraging that more inventory will help, but we don't know how much of a difference it will make on the affordability front. Lorraine, you were next.
I was curious, like $1,200 when you say that as you're giving people a break, that seems like a lot. So my curiosity is, what is it? What is the normal rentals in our community? Like someone told me in the new buildings now it's $5,000 a month. And to me, when we look at people that are on limited incomes, how would they ever be able to afford that? Even a senior whose husband has died and they're left, maybe to sell a house, they're still not going to be able to afford $5,000 a month. Like it's a crisis, I think.
Emily, so you mentioned it's the average market rent, which determines the PHB, and the numbers you gave were between $850 and $1,000. How current are those? Because I guess the realities that we're seeing anyway is that you wouldn't be able to find an apartment today for those rental rates.
So there's not what
Emily, I think everyone else here are okay, or she sound like a robot coming? Want to try again, Emily? Oh, now you're quiet. No sound coming through at all. Okay, we'll circle back to Emily in a minute. Who is next? I think Vicky.
Yes, I just want to say for any tenants and landlords watching, with all due respect as well, that there's a bit of a stigma also around social assistance and income, and the fact that they think that it's not guaranteed. But it is guaranteed. You'll get it every month. Like as long as you meet the criteria and everything else, the only way you'll be kicked off of it is if you happen to make more than what you're entitled to make, I think. But then even then they graduate like $500, I think they take off maximum each month from your paycheck. Either way, I just want people, especially landlords, to know that just because somebody's on social assistance does not mean that they don't get guaranteed income every month. Like not that it's per se enough to afford this rent, which is outrageous, but it's at least guaranteed income.
Yes. And just because someone's on social assistance, either ODSP or OW, does not mean they're going to be a bad tenant either. Yeah. Jeff?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I wish I had some good news about Cambridge project in Smith Falls. Unfortunately, we were not picked in the second round of Rapid Housing Initiative funding, which would have been like hitting the lottery. There were those that were getting up to 100% funding. And anyways, we weren't picked in the first or second round, but I want people to understand that we are not stopping. We are down that road, and we are going back to CMHC for their co-investment funding. And hopefully with what we've done to date, that will put us in good stead, and hopefully we'll be able to put a shovel in the ground in 2022. So, and I have a question for Emily. Emily, are you interested in working with us in doing something that would be specific to helping people in Smith Falls, if we were to have a fund?
Well, that's actually already happened.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So I guess just to bring the group up to date. Jeff, thanks for bringing it up. I'd rather you mention it to the group than myself. So even though it's disappointing that Cambridge was not successful in getting the RHI funding, two things have happened since our last meeting. One, County Council, initially Community Services and County Council, committed to funding all 28 units as RGI. So that's I think a cost of about $250,000 from the county to ensure that every unit of 44 chambers will be rent geared to income. And the second piece, just subsequent to that, Town Council, because 44 chambers sits within the area of our current community improvement plan. Within that plan, there's a program which will allow us to significantly reduce taxes for up to 10 years. And it's the increase in taxes from what the property's worth vacant to what it is when it's occupied. And so council, even though we don't know the number yet, committed in principle to provide a 10-year tax abatement for 44 chambers as well. So that enables Carebridge, when it comes to their operating model, to know that they've got reduced expenses in trying to carry the cost of managing and operating and running the facility. So these are all positive, I think, which will help. We had hoped it would help Carebridge with their application to CMHC.
Oh, very much.
But in both cases, it will still make a difference in enabling that project to move ahead next year. Lindsay?
Yeah, so I think I kind of forgot what I was going to say, but I just like Lorraine, to your point about, is $1,200 affordable? And like, I mean, it's still a very valid question, given, the income levels, and it's just becoming this like problem. I hope like the group and everyone watching can understand too, like I'm a huge advocate, but I'm still a developer, which sucks. I have to kind of wear both hats. I try to do what I can. But when we were renting out Phillip, I mean, we were renting it out for $1,550, $1,600. So we were able to take off $400 a month in rent, as well offer to cover utilities for tenants because they were rent plus utilities. And that utility also is a huge burden sometimes to tenants, not just because it's a bit of a variable monthly expense, and that sometimes can just be very hard for budgeting. But also, I mean, if you don't have a very good credit rating, they normally require you to put down a deposit. And that's just a huge barrier too, that I think is really unfortunate. And so things that I think, as a whole, that should be encouraged perhaps when it comes to when landlords come to council and they say, or developers, we're going to build affordable units and such like that. I think some additional questions that should be posed to them is things such as, well, how will the utilities for that unit be covered as well? Because I think if you can have landlords commit to that during the planning stage, it just helps better serve the purpose of those units, which is creating affordability, which is, maintaining a consistent fixed monthly fee without varied other expenses in there. And so that's one thing that we tried to do at Phillip as well, was either we're going to cover your hydro account for you. If you exceed, $120 a month in charges, okay, we'll have to have a talk, but based off of this and that, this is what we'd like to do as well. So those are some of the other benefits or things that we tried to do on Phillip, to then just add a little bit more of an ease to some tenants as well. One thing we did, just being a proactive thing, I guess, was there are certain tenants in the building who are single. And so we asked everyone who is single in each building going, you want to share your Wi-Fi with 3 other people in the building versus, 6 people getting 6 Wi-Fi accounts. Let's just have one set up. If everyone can be in agreement to paying each $20 each, I mean, you have high-speed internet. And again, maybe the one person who has the better credit takes on that account. And, obviously there's always risks, someone may not pay. But again, that was something we really tried to do. Once we knew who our tenants were, we basically just said, so-and-so and so-and-so, there's about 4 people who are single. Do you guys want to join together and save costs on Wi-Fi? But that takes effort, and not a lot of landlords and developers are willing to do that. So I think things that council can really say to developers when they're trying to get any benefit to affordability credits is like, really, what are you going to do when that's done? Are you actually going to put in those system and processes to ensure that certain things are done in addition? And can we hold you accountable to your word? Obviously you can't put, I don't think, legal framework to things like that. And then again, I'm going to hamper on this because I always do. We have, I think, 500 new building permits likely being issued in 2022. None of them are being charged a development fee. That's money that the town should be making. That's money that the town should be investing. It's money that the town can be using to be going towards rent subsidies. It's ridiculous. Ottawa brought in $2 billion this year in development fees. and they didn't put an ounce of it towards affordable housing. Not an ounce. They put 5%, 1.5% of their budget towards affordable housing in this city. You know, I'd like the town to do something better than that.
Well, thanks, Lindsay. It's not common to hear a developer builder suggest a municipality should be implementing a development charges policy. Frankly, we likely will. I think by kind of Q1 next year, if council agrees to it. So the policy is almost complete. But again, if it had been here a few years ago, it might have been more advantageous, of course.
And I just want to say one thing to it. Right now, I know the town is growing. I know that money can be used for probably more staffing. But again, the town operates without these development fees currently. So I'm hoping that the town doesn't choose to take all those development fees to use them towards other things. It'd be great if the town was like 50% of these development fees are going to go towards rent subsidy. Last thing.
And on that, I'm not perfectly versed in it, but there is a very strict regulatory environment from the province that determines the amount of development charges that a town can apply per residential unit or on a commercial basis, on a commercial industrial per square foot basis. And there are prescribed expenses that can be utilized. So, but to that point, if those do go elsewhere, it may mean there is other budget available that could go towards housing. Who's next? Joanne, I think? Yes.
Just to, like Lindsay was saying, there's a lot more development going on. Can it be something that could be maybe stipulated that there's for every new building a developer has, there has to be so many units that are under the affordable housing, or having, you know, like we have nice subdivisions going up. For every 3 house, 1 has to be an affordable housing unit. Like, can something like that be stipulated? Because Smith Falls is growing, and a lot of the people that are coming are people that have higher income, and they're coming in from Ottawa because it's more affordable. But
yeah, to that, Joanne, I can answer that question, and we discussed that prior to you joining the advisory committee. But so that's called having an inclusionary zoning bylaw. And I think it's Ottawa just in the process of passing that bylaw. The challenge, not challenge, I guess the barrier to us bringing that in is provincial legislation and regulations prohibit a municipality to bring in inclusionary zoning bylaw unless it has transit. So if we had public transit, we would have the autonomy to bring in an inclusionary zoning bylaw within a certain perimeter of major transit stations. So it's very even some other municipalities will be challenged to do it because it has to be, I'd say, adjacent to major transit stations. So we can't do it today. We have actually, I believe Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we already have sent a letter to the province asking that this be reconsidered so that smaller municipalities, I mean, Smith Falls is less than 10 square kilometers and it's very walkable. We've passed a active transportation and complete streets policy earlier this week, which will help guide decisions in the future regarding making sure that the town is as safe as possible for pedestrians and cyclists, and that we enable more active transportation in town. So again, if you can walk or bike around, we don't need, even though transportation is an issue for people, it's something that we have not gone down that road. And if we did go down that road, I don't know how the current policies in the province would even determine where we could create inclusionary zoning. To my understanding, it's only within maybe 500 meters of a major transit station. Anyway, so some barriers there, at least at this stage. Vicki?
I think we need to be careful with our terminology because Smith Falls is only walkable to able-bodied people. Anybody with a disability, senior or otherwise, cannot walk to the highway to get to every grocery store. We literally have a food desert. So transportation is something to think about, especially with our parking issue as well. I'll dip out.
We'll just agree on that, Vicki. Joanne, did you have another comment, or did your hand just still up?
Fortunately, I don't know how to take the hand off.
Okay. No worries. Okay, so we've had a great discussion on this, and I think, sorry, Courtney, go ahead.
So to what Vicky said, I'm not trying to ruffle feathers or anything. Like, I understand downtown, the majority of the sidewalks and stuff have been like redone, but the street that I live on right now, I can't even take my son to his bus stop because the curbs at this end of town are still like not good. So as far as Smith Falls being, completely walkable and travelable, like, I can't get from my house to a grocery store alone right now.
No, that's fair, Courtney. And I said that the plan does go across town and identify where the barriers are today. It'll probably be 10 years before everything is implemented, and that's assuming future councils want to follow through and make those improvements. But your point's well taken. Thank you. So on a portable housing benefit, so I think we've all got a much better understanding today of what that is. And I think there was always understanding that it's something that would make an incredible difference for anyone who would receive that. And it can be the difference, obviously, between being housed or not being housed. It can be the difference between maybe being housed and having no money for food or anything else, and then having that extra amount of money to buy groceries. So we recognize there's incredible merits of this, and the town has long contributed towards Leonard County housing. So both our social housing as well as the various programs that we fund, including the PHB, to a more modest amount, obviously, than what the needs are. So the challenge, as I mentioned earlier, is there's probably no number that's big enough to truly meet all the needs. But we have to, I'd like us to make a recommendation to council to consider implementing funding a PHB. And I'm hoping this is something that Emily would be able to get support at county to administer for the town and under the current programs. In other words, would we simply provide a pot of money that could be utilized to support PHBs for Smith Falls? And recognizing that for council, this is housing, affordable housing is, I would say, our top strategic priority for this term, which we've got less than a year to go. At the same time as balancing all of the needs of the municipality, all the costs that are there all the time, as well as all the capital improvements that need to be made, managing an infrastructure deficit where we've got probably some decades of underfunding towards major infrastructure. So it's a balance. And so if we went to town council and said, we want $500,000 for affordable housing benefit, I suggest that's probably not going to fly. But what I'm looking for here is, as we try to wind up this discussion, I know there's a strong interest, and I know there would be interest in trying to make that number as big as possible. And my hope is we can find the sweet spot. As Emily mentioned, there's been 105 of these PHBs currently available across the county. The county's 10-year housing homelessness plan will add, I think, about 10 more every second year, if I'm not mistaken, Emily. And so the availability of those from going forward will be modest, in my opinion, compared to where the needs are. What would we like to do? Vicki, you're first.
Yeah, thank you. I think we should maybe, because it's going to be distributed by the county, if they only have parameters that it has to be distributed county-wide, not just to the town, we could always approach other mayors like we discussed before, or other municipalities and councils and see if they'd be willing to also fund this. So it's not all just solely Smith Falls. So say if somebody found an affordable unit, but it was in Carlton Place, they could utilize that still without leaving them homeless and without options. Because I don't want to increase like an influx of people coming in being like, oh my God, Smith Falls cares about us finally, which we do, but it's that bad where if hundreds of people are looking at houses, like it's really bad. But that's a potential option.
Great point, Vicki. And I guess I'll turn to Emily. I mean, if we're able to get support at our council level, and Emily's able to get support at county to administer the program, I guess how, Emily, how do you think that could work? I mean, to Vicky's point, if we said the money is only for Smith Falls residents, your wait list is countywide. And to Vicky's point, there's nothing stopping people from moving to Smith Falls because this option or opportunity may be here that's not available elsewhere.
I hope you can hear me better now.
Yes.
Is that better? Okay. I think there's something wrong with the mic on my computer, to be honest. But
Okay.
so one thing I guess I'll say is movement out of the program is very limited to none in our experience since starting it in 2019. So I would need county council approval to do a new program like this. But what would happen is we would look at the people on the wait list currently that are residing in Smith Falls. We would send out letters to them and say, hey, if you're interested, you need to contact us. So it would be only given to people already living in Smith Falls. It wouldn't be open to people. And because movement is next to none off of the program, there is some, but it's very limited. I don't think you would attract people from outside the town to move there for the additional support, because it would still be most likely years before they were eligible. So no, it could assist people for sure who have been on our wait list already for a very long time.
Okay, that's helpful. And again, the other thing to remember is it is potentially a very long-term commitment, because once you provide someone with a PHB, you can't very well pull it back in future years. And I suppose once they are receiving the PHB, as you mentioned, they're off the county wait list, so they're no longer eligible for social housing. So they have to be willing to make that step in order to be able to get a PHB. So the numbers may be more modest if people are not wanting to get off the wait list, or don't want to take the risk of having to be off the wait list if they sign up for a PHB.
Yeah, our PHBs have no end date. The old programs that we spoke about earlier, those rent supports, they were available for 5 years only. So our PHBs are essentially forever.
Okay. Joanne, your hand's still up or back up? Oh, you're on mute.
It's back up because I just wanted some clarification. When we talked about addressing to the other mayors, it was so that each town would give an extra support to the housing, so that everybody in the county would be helping, because Carlton Place is just in as bad situation as Smith Falls is. And if anything, their rents are even higher than Smith Falls, my understanding. So when we talked about, or when it was brought up, I was hoping that there would have been a discussion with the other mayors. Has that ever happened, or?
No, I haven't. And I guess from a complexity standpoint, so the greater opportunity probably would be at the county level. So Smith Falls, as a separated community, has a vote on community services and corporate services committees. We don't have a full say at county council. County council is populated with mayors and deputy mayors and reeves and deputy reeves from the other municipalities within Lanark County. And I don't know, to my knowledge, there has not been a request in the past to significantly increase the PHB. But it would, I would believe that if it was to ever increase, it would be done at the county level, probably not at the lower tier level. So, and that would be, but that doesn't mean I can't advocate to my colleagues at county council to see if there's an appetite for that. But where the 2022 budget for county is coming up tonight. So I mean, that'll likely be approved tonight. So it's definitely not going to happen for this year. And in the future, it's really hard to tell. Of course, we're also going into election year next year. So I think the interest of this advisory committee is focused on Smiths Falls, certainly for now. And I would suggest that we have to look at as a separated community, as a single tier, we do have some autonomy to do things that others may not. I mean, it's our decision. It's not a broader county decision, other than Emily obviously would need approval if her and her staff would be devoting time and energy to this. So again, looking for direction from the group, and at some point in time, I'd like to have a motion here as to what we want to recommend to our council when it relates to a PHB.
And I think, oh, sorry, I didn't put my hand up. I just started talking.
Go ahead, Ellie.
I mean, I think from my perspective, I think it's critical that we move forward to take this to council at looking at developing a PHB for Smiths Falls. I think that's in the best interest of all Smiths Falls community members.
Ellie, from your previous experience at Cornerstone, and I know you were working with a segment of the community, a certain age segment, youth primarily, but would your perception be that there is very high needs and would be high demand?
Yeah, for sure. I think, Cornerstone Landing has the transition house now, which has the 3 beds, and adding kind of more as we speak, hopefully, as long as permits and everything go through. But I mean, that's predominantly what we do. I would say, aside from the outreach work that we do, is the rent supplements. And Cornerstone Landing does rely on fundraising. So for them, it is very, essential to get that fundraising to maintain those rent supplements for a minimum of a year. Because there's, at times, we can provide a one-off rent supplement of, $400 if need be, if somebody's in arrears or just moving and they've already accessed their HOP funds and they're, on the wait list for the PHP or the COB. But I mean, at the same time, they're, depleted as well in rent supplements. I mean, I don't have an exact number of how many rent supplements we give a year and how many or the amount that is given. But I mean, I would say they're essential. Without them, we wouldn't be able to house a lot of the youth that are housed.
Thank you. Lindsay, then Vicki.
Yeah, so totally think we should be recommending something. I think we should be asking for $500,000. And that's just based off of $250 times 150 people a month times 12 months, $487,000. So that's a good amount to actually do some good work. I also just think a strong recommendation needs to be made that outside of census, the town of Smiths Falls should be investing a lot in annual statistics and data. Really, we are referencing stuff that we don't even actually know what the true data is on. Our housing survey was a very poor group of respondents that do not reflect its purpose. So I think as well, the town just needs to consider doing some proper statistical and data work.
Thanks, Lindsay. Vicki?
I agree. I believe we need to go forward with this to council. I think we should be a bit modest given council's last dejection of our recommendation. So I think maybe starting around 100,000 and then going up to 500,000 would be nice. Allow them to have some control so they, you know, psychology, right? You know, and
Ask for it all and see what they give us.
yeah, I mean, try. But like my mom raised me around, you know, bidding, buying and selling. So that's how I view it. Start low and then go high and at least get them hooked. Because we can always like figure out fundraising or some methods around this. I can volunteer in any way possible to make this happen. You know this. So I do think it's a very, very much needed program that needs to happen, and the funding needs to be there at minimum for the next year. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. And before I go to, I guess, Courtney and then Joanne, I guess the other question back to Emily. I mean, it's your capacity, and it may be hard to quantify that, but I'm sure if we had 200 people on with PHBs, the volume of work for that may be beyond what your staff would have the capacity for. So we have to be, I guess, respective of at least starting out that we'd have to, if we're utilizing an existing program with an existing administration and expertise, which makes all the sense in the world, we have to understand there might be thresholds on the capacity Emily and her team would have in administering a program like this. Is that fair, Emily?
Yeah, for sure. 200 PHBs would probably be close to a full-time staff person. There's a lot of work involved in it, and people do call with questions. And usually what happens is then we get connected to those households and families and support them with other things. So the annual updates is a big job. Probably not a full-time, but very close to. So it wouldn't be something we would be able to take on immediately by any means.
So the reality there, I guess, is if it got to a point when it required additional staffing, the additional cost would be impacting how to come out of the program. I mean,
That's right.
We probably couldn't expect the county to absorb that cost. It would be something we would have to bear ourselves.
And I'm not sure, we have to be mindful that this program is just one answer to the solution of the affordable housing issues we have, right? Like increasing stock. There's a variety of solutions. I'm not sure we'd actually be able to fill that many PHBs from Smith Falls alone. There might be that many people in need, but the program is not necessarily suited for everybody because some people want to stay on the affordable housing wait list. You know, so I'm not sure. I don't think we'd be able to fill that many spots.
Okay, thank you. Joanne? Oh, sorry, no, Courtney.
So I was going to say pretty much kind of the same thing as like everyone else has been saying. I think that this needs to be brought forward. And just off what Lindsay said, how many applicants she had for her $1,200 unit, like the need is clearly there for people like needing assistance with their rent. Like I said, I wouldn't be in this place if I didn't have the PHB that I have now. So maybe, like Vicky said, starting off with like a lower amount of money, or even ask them like, what would you be willing to put forth into this? What is a reasonable amount to you? Like, see what they offer. And then if we don't think that's enough, can we like counter with a higher offer, or do we only have like one shot at asking?
So the town's budget process, we had our first budget meeting November 22nd. Our second meeting is December 13th. Final approval is scheduled for mid-January, I believe, but it could happen earlier. So I would say this is probably our only opportunity to express our wishes to council. Trying to think who was next. Oh, Joanne.
I tend to agree with Vicky, maybe because it's our first request to the town, maybe, of course, it'd be nice if we couldn't have all the money we want or need, but if we ask for a lower, then it's a step forward. And maybe at the same time, council could also help us to develop a better plan or better access. I just think that maybe, yeah, if we address it, for sure, address it to council, but then be a little bit less ambitious on the our request, but make sure that we have a little something is better than nothing.
Thank you. And to that point, I'm hoping once the foundation for this is built and supported, I think we would probably have a pretty good idea within a year if there is significant excessive demand over and above what is being provided. And that may guide decisions of future councils as to whether they're willing to put a larger commitment into this. So this would be almost, it's not a trial period, it's not a pilot period, because once you commit to it, you have to follow through with it. When it comes to growth, I think we'd have better understanding going forward. I think Ellie and then Lindsay.
Yeah, I just kind of just touching back on when we were talking about the capacity of Lanark County and, you know, them having to hire another staff member and such. You know, from my point of view, would it not make sense to partner with a local agency who's already, you know, who maybe it'd be more simple for them to just kind of adapt that and for the money to be able to fund through them. I'm not saying just simply Cornerstone Landing, because obviously they do just work on youth or just work specifically with youth. And I don't want to put any other organizations kind of publicly out there, but I do know, you know, behind the scenes, there have been a couple of organizations that have been talking about implementing a similar format that Cornerstone Landing does in regards to having an adult housing caseworker and providing those rent supplements. So, you know, in regards to capacity, I think there's no point in duplicating what's being done. It's just kind of connecting with the right agencies who are already doing the work and, you know, just helping them do that work better and more effectively, but also at a greater scale.
Okay, maybe that's something you can forward through email, Ellie, and we can have a discussion on that. Thank you. Lindsay?
So my one comment is just on again, what we asked council for. And what sucks is because we don't have data, we can't show them the quantifiable reasons for going, we need at least $500,000. So again, I think it really sucks for us to maybe have to say, well, give us 100,000 so we can show you where that goes and how we've used it. It's going to be used up within 3 months at least. Again, it's just, if we use this money, I think we have to, again, put a huge onus on just data. It went out in 2 months. Rationalize to me why we don't need that times 6 then. It went out in 3 months. Rationalize why we don't need 4 times that. And so again, that's just one thing I'm hoping that we can also involve with this and more things as we do them moving forward. Is data is really what we should be using to guide decisions. And we don't have any qualitative or quantitative data and a lot of the things we're asking for right now. And I just think that, you know, we should be really trying to compile as much as we can.
Great point. Thank you. Vicky?
With all due respect, with the limitations around the county's governance of funding, either staffing or people not being able to utilize the program because they would jeopardize their position on housing, I do think, to Ellie's point, we need to definitely include other organizations that are willing and able to take this on and do all the legwork, do all the footwork, you know, because there's organizations fundraising right now, which is totally fine, but they're fundraising. And if we could give them money to help people, like, you know, it's just, I've slept out in the cold, definitely on my birthday, just to raise a couple $100 for Cornerstone Landing. And that's not enough. It worries me. It really does. So if we can involve any other organizations, partnerships, etc., there's plenty out there and plenty local. So it's definitely something we should look at. And then we could increase the funding in the future as well, too.
Right. Well, thanks, Vicky. And I think it's, I mean, it really ultimately up to the council to decide if it does decide to support a program, what mechanism and partnerships it would utilize to distribute the funds. And I know there's a high degree of confidence with the county, and but doesn't mean that would have to be the direction. But I think based on the provincial standards that the county follows and the methodology that's there today, it is a good example. But I think we can look at all possibilities. But I tend to think, and it's with respect to the other members of county council, it's there may be how do I say it? I don't think they would necessarily be that keen on sharing an administrative cost of managing a program for Smith Falls. So I think if we can take advantage of an existing structure and simply plug in a little bit of additional work and a small administrative cost to do so, maybe the best way to start. But anyway, I respect the comments. I think what we need to make
blindsided though. Like these programs are already established in other organizations. It's not like they're starting from scratch. So if we show them the data, show them proper information, show them how the money is going to be utilized, it shouldn't be a problem to partner in other organizations. And if people on council are not willing to see that this is a dire need, then I cannot wait for the next election.
Well, and I guess, Vicky, to your point, we're potentially going somewhere where I'm not aware of any other small municipality that is even considering something like this. So I think it's a very, I guess, forward-thinking move by this advisory group to make this recommendation to council. And but it said we can look at what options may be available to manage this program. We don't even make a decision on that, I guess. And I say we would, if there's other options available, obviously they would be considered, and staff would do some sort of due diligence with anyone that would be considered, and we'll take it from there. But the key thing today is I think we need to make a recommendation to council to consider a PHP and to consider a dollar amount towards that. And Lorraine, I'll put you on the spot because you're the other member of council on this. You'll be ultimately one of the people who are voting on this, and I guess sort of your perspective and.
Well, you know, Sean, you and I have talked about this. You certainly have my support. I believe in this passionately, but I also know that all of my colleagues, we've been wrestling with our budget, twice now we've looked at it, and there's not a lot of areas that can be cut. So if they agree to this, it's going to be taking it from somewhere else that's already there. So it's going to be a struggle. I don't disagree that we should ask for it, and I don't disagree that it's something that our town needs very much. And I would really like our council and future councils to commit to it. I just don't know if we're going to be as successful as you're hoping we will be, because I think partly because of where our budget is right now and the needs that we have in it. But I hope I'm wrong. I really do.
We'll pray for Chris's miracle. Things change the next couple of weeks, or next week, I guess I should say. Vicky, your hand's still up or back up?
Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Give me a moment.
Okay. So there's no question there's a high interest in doing something. That the challenge is what's that right amount, and we don't have to maybe amount. Maybe simply we recommend that council set aside an amount in the 2022 budget to fund a portable housing benefit for residents of our community. Or Carrie, you're still there. Your thoughts from a clerk standpoint?
From my standpoint, yeah, if we obviously bring forward a resolution to council, and if you want to leave it open-ended, Mayor Panko, and just simply say that look to council to make that decision for the amount of funding. I mean, obviously under your and Councillor Allen's I guess presentation, or a bit of a give them some background on the Housing Advisory Committee and this discussion. We could simply do a resolution that the HAC is recommending that council set aside funding. I don't know if you want to put with a minimum amount in there in their 2022 budget to support an affordable housing initiative. And then we're not locking ourselves into, who's going to administer it or anything like that. Once we get further down the road, if we need agreements in place for administration, we can do that separately.
Okay.
What are your thinking? What's your thoughts on it?
Well, I'm going to go to Courtney. She has her hand up.
Okay.
Sorry to kind of interrupt there. I just also want to point out one thing. I don't know if you guys have browsed Facebook and seen the opinions people have on council and the choices we're making or they're making and things, but the people in town, the one comment I see the most is about affordable housing and how bad it's needed and how council needs to step up and really make that a priority. So I think that council really needs to look at this and listen to the opinions of the people in town because, we're the ones that need it. So just kind of heavily take this into consideration.
Thanks, Courtney. And I agree. Our strategic plan we established in 2019, it was a key priority, and everything we're doing today is sort of come out of that initiative. But to your point, until we have people living in homes they can afford, we really haven't accomplished anything. So Vicky, do you want to make a comment before I make a recommendation?
Yeah, I gathered my thoughts. Apologies. So correct me if I'm wrong, 46% of the town rents? Approximately?
42% was the last census.
Okay, so a little under half. So what worries me is that I represent those people on this task force, not alone, but I do. And what really worries me is that the CIP funding, or the CIP that we're putting forward has a lot of incentives, but a lot of incentives for people who own their homes. 42% of people here do not own their homes. So what's going to happen to the half that don't? There's no incentive. This is our only chance at it, if anything, unless we come up with some other carrot out of some other hat, rabbit out of a hat of some sort of way. But we've gone through how many different plans? I've sat with you on this task force for at least 2 years now, if not more. We've gone through the pandemic. We found out about it together. Like, I really, really need people to open their eyes and see that we are all struggling. We are going homeless. I myself am financially stable, but at any given time, if something about that changes, there's the street. I need people to realize, and so many people are on the street right now. I gave a presentation about this, about all the people that I found on Facebook just in that week is what I gave a presentation on. Furthermore, I called every hotel in town and I gathered what their nightly rates were. They do not give monthly rates. They do not give weekly rates. They do not give forgiveness in the winter. Nothing. I don't know what more to do. I'm pulling out my hair. I'm losing sleep over this. It's not healthy for me, but I don't want to step down because I don't know what other choice people have. Really. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Vicky, and your sense of passion and purpose is helping drive our decisions here. And overall, there is, in addition to the formation of this group, 16 other recommendations that we think will have a difference over time. And the Affordable Housing CIP will be aimed at giving developers incentives to develop and commit to affordable units. Now, as Albion provides incentives, we can't wave a stick. We can only wave some incentives. But so in conclusion here, and Lindsay, I'll come back to you in a moment. The town does commit 1% of our tax revenue to a community grants program. And that's an application-based process that numerous organizations have utilized over the years, from the Railway Museum of Eastern Ontario to festivals to food security. We provided money to lunch programs in town over the last year and this year. So that works out to about $150,000. So I would suggest that housing is a foundation of everyone's security. That's nothing no one here doesn't understand, and probably ranks at least as important as a lot of other initiatives that the town supports. So my recommendation today is that we would ask that 1% of tax revenue be committed to affordable housing benefit for the residents of Smith Falls. Lindsay, I'll let you go next.
Yeah, I think Vicky's actually raised something that I maybe am having like reflection on, which is two-part, and just Sean, you can nod your head on this just as I ask this question. We have the Affordability Fund that we've asked to have a budget amount allocated to in the 2022 budget, right? We've asked council to allocate money there. And so is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
But
then,
much of that, the biggest incentive for most developers will likely be programmed for the current CIP, which is the tax abatement.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe no outlay of cost. It's more a matter of maybe waiving some planning and building permit fees and things like that. Mm-hmm. But the actual abatement probably stands the biggest incentive. So there may not be a huge net cost to the town, at least the first year, because the CIP won't be in place probably till mid-year.
So that's the community improvement plan.
Yes.
Did we not recommend a community affordability plan? Am I mixing something up?
No.
Okay, I thought we had agreed as a committee that we all voted and asking council to set aside like 1% of the budget or something like that. I thought I remembered that in the summer.
We had 2% towards the CIP.
Okay, it went towards the CIP, which would be then allocated towards affordability.
Yes, but I said in reflection on that, I said the CIP will not be in place till mid-year, and there may not be a lot of actual costs attached to it. Secondary unit, an incentive for secondary units may be something that could catch on, but I think the bigger CIP allocation is likely in 2023.
I'm struggling with the idea of giving developers breaks on fees, considering they don't pay fees right now. And I actually agree with Vicky. Right now, I'm questioning, and this is part of this group. We're supposed to go through like an evolution of discussion. So I'm kind of coming full circle on a thought right now where I don't think any money should be given to any developer because they currently don't pay development fee. That's the incentive right now to develop in Smith Falls. And that $2,000 here or that $2,000 there, that could be given back to them for a building permit fee. I mean, that's helping one person for a year. I'm actually struggling really a lot right now that I'm understanding like some things. I've missed some meetings too. So, considering that all they do right now is we pay our application fees. I don't know. It's about immediate action.
Yeah.
And none of these monies will go towards any immediate action within the next calendar year.
So your feeling is that affordable housing benefit is the one that means the most, the quickest.
Cut the other one.
Okay. Joanne?
Me too. I'm starting to get my head around the whole thing. And you're saying that 1% of our taxes, we can allocate it to housing. Is that what you are proposing?
That's what I'm proposing this committee recommend to council.
Will that be put into effect like next year?
Sorry. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Courtney.
Will that be put into effect like 2022 instead of waiting for 2023 with the other one?
Yeah, the 2022.
Okay.
And I fully agree with 10,000% agree with what Lindsay said.
Yeah, I agree too. And I think we do need to prove to future council, like Lindsay was saying, this could be our year to set up data, also to have a needs assessment. Well, we know the need. We don't need a needs assessment because we know it. It doesn't have to be, but we can look at our inventory in Smith Falls. We can look at the growth of Smith Falls, and then how is that going to impact people, like we have a high level of Ontario Works and ODSP. We have a high level of seniors in our community. So, you know, like if we have that data, like Lindsay's saying, next year could be our year to be really focusing on the needs, what dollar amount we need to support our community, and the town's involvement in supporting its community, like, and putting money aside on a regular budget line on ongoing.
So I think the points, especially regarding data, are, I mean, we all know the needs are dire, and we know that the situation today is even more difficult than what it was in the last census came out in 2016. The difficult part is quantifying that. How many people? How big's the gap? How many rental units are we short? How many subsidized units do we need? I think that's a great point, and I think, Carrie, another recommendation, and I don't know if there may be some cost attached to it, would be we complete an exercise to truly determine where these numbers are, and that's by hiring probably someone who can do a suitable survey and can reach out in the community to the depth and breadth that we would need. Courtney?
Do we know currently how many people from Smith Falls are on the wait list for housing? Like, do we have?
Are you able to
access?
answer that, Emily?
I don't have that off the top of my head, unfortunately. Sorry. And
Is that something we could get for one of the next meetings, possibly?
so how our wait list works is it looks at demand, not necessarily need. So it looks at where people are looking to apply to, not necessarily where they live right now. So I'm not even sure if that is something I can get you. So it looks at, all I know is where people want to apply to. So if they want to move to Smith Falls, but they could live even outside of Lanark County and be looking at moving to Smith Falls. So I just wanted to, Mayor Panko, if you have a minute, to comment on actual needs and demands of like for affordable housing targets. The county has hired SHS Consulting. They are experts in this kind of research. They're working with WSP, who is a planning firm, and they are going to be setting housing targets for each municipality. And then they're looking at housing targets for grouped rural municipalities. So they are preparing targets for the town of Smith Falls. So they're going to look at, they're still in early phases. We had some initial meetings, but there's going to be some public consultation for that study towards the end of January. But they are looking at setting housing targets based on data that we have. So you may want to wait before setting aside sort of any funding, you know, for that study to be released to see if it gives you what you are looking for.
Okay, that may be what we need.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Lindsay, you have another comment with your hand still up?
Yeah, I just had one other thought, which was, I know that there's some other community improvement programs outside. So there's the community improvement program. I think there's also a program where applicants can ask for grants to upgrade downtown property. I don't know if that's a different grant.
So the existing CIP, which covers the downtown core and the shoulder areas, has been focused primarily on facade and improvement. So visual improvements in the downtown area. Program 4 and under that is what an applicant can apply for a tax abatement.
Yeah.
Based on increase in their assessment, and that's what CareBridge it will be receiving for 44 chambers. So that's the existing CIP. The affordable housing CIP that is currently under study, under preparation, will cover the entire community, and we focus just on developing policies and programs and funding to encourage the development of more affordable units.
Just curious if when allocating monies and creating these budgets, because they're budgets, sometimes they're not actual numbers, sometimes the town will not know how much of that money is actually going to be spent. Can a recommendation be made that should any area in which money is budgeted for not be used within that calendar year, that money then directly goes back to rent subsidies so that it's always used in full? Whether that's, $1,000 left over somewhere here, $1,000 left over somewhere there, any remaining amount that ends out that fiscal year, can it be then allocated towards rent subsidies?
A little more complex because we already have policies in place to deal with surpluses, and we will.
And they don't address affordability?
No. So as an example, if it's in the water and wastewater budget, it's got to go back into the wastewater reserves. It goes in general. Most of it goes back into our general capital reserves. So especially if a capital project is deferred until the following year. So that's a far more, I guess, complex challenge, and because we will always finish with a surplus. We should anyway. We can't finish with a deficit. So and surpluses could be $500,000 a year, could be more. So it's hard to, that would be a hard one to recommend. But I think overall, we are we've got 23 minutes left, and we're on our first item on the agenda. We won't get obviously to everything today, but I think it's probably the most important one. That's what we put it first. So let's go to Joanne and then Vicky. I'd like to come up with a conclusion here and a recommendation to council.
Okay, so you have to have a decision today so that you could address it on December 13th at council, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so does the budget have a line for affordable housing in Smith Falls, like in the town's budget? Is there a line for that, or would we, by putting that the tax dollars, would it create a new line?
So today, the line we would have for affordable housing is what we pay to Lanark County through our shared services agreement. And that is, I don't have the number in front of me, somewhere around, it's $400,000, I believe, Emily. Yeah, so the town does currently commit about $400,000 a year to Lanark County housing for the various, a lot of it's for social housing and the supports for that, as well as some goes to the affordable housing benefit. So this would be, I'm not sure from a technical standpoint whether it would be a change to this our shared services agreement or a separate line item, but it wouldn't be a one-time thing. It would have to be permanently entrenched in our budget.
That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm wondering is if we well, I think we're pretty much in favor of addressing this to council and creating a new line so that we have an ongoing budget line for affordable housing. And that's what I was sort of getting at, is that will this create a new line that will continue on in the future?
I would say yes. And the reason I suggested that 1% of tax revenue is that would make it a fluid number. So as tax revenue increases in the future, as the town grows, which we are doing, that number would go up every year. Vicky, I guess you're next.
I'll keep it short. Back to Courtney's question. I don't have any data on the point for the, excuse me. Oh, I've lost my notes, but my data is for housing. The wait list for housing, to my knowledge, is over 10 years long and growing. So, I mean, people all the time suggest on Facebook, people go to housing. It's not an option at this point at all. So
this is a portable housing benefit is probably the quickest, most responsive manner we can utilize to make a difference for a number of citizens. As I said, if there is currently 105
attached to receiving social assistance sometimes, so I really think putting another set of money, a pot aside, or having other organizations involved will really take away the stigma.
Well, and we know we have, if there's 105 affordable housing benefits now across the county, I don't know exactly how many, but we might have 30 coming to Smith Falls. So if our funding enabled another 30, we're essentially doubling the number of people who in town who are receiving that benefit. I know it may not be enough.
Emily said that it would not be beneficial, not that many people foresees using it, and the staffing would be overwhelmed. So I think we need to look at other options.
No, let Emily clarify there.
Sorry if I was confusing, but that's if we added 200 spaces, there wouldn't be. I think 30, I think would not be hard to fill. I mean, that's work, but that's if you add 200 spaces. The difference, and for sure we have some wonderful nonprofits that do fantastic work, is that they wouldn't be able to access the people that are on the wait list. They would, you know, primarily serve people from their own services, which is often the same people. But if you're looking to get at that wait list, which is long, you know, that would be a relationship with the county, but 30, you know, is definitely manageable. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Emily. And so the average cost is around, as you mentioned, around $3,200 a year is the average investment. I shouldn't say cost, it's an investment in someone's housing. So if council did agree to 1%, it's about 150,000. We are potentially looking at 40 some. If the number gets shaved back a bit, it hopefully could still be 20 to 30 some. So I'm going to ask if anyone would like to put forward a motion as to how we should be, and Carrie's adding some additional data here. Okay. Yeah, so Courtney, I think Emily sort of answered your question that when people apply, people on the wait list are potentially from anywhere in the province. And they've indicated they want it. So it's going to be difficult to quantify where they live today. Ellie, you're back. So Ellie and then Lindsay.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. I just wanted to, I mean, Jeff had to dash, I know, but does CareBridge not access people off the wait list? Just to Emily's point there.
Yes, go ahead, Emily.
So that's a very different relationship. They are under the Housing Services Act as a nonprofit housing provider. So that is why they're able to access the wait list. So it's only people that are designated nonprofit housing providers under the Act that are able to get that information. So it includes CareBridge, Clayton Seniors, Elizabeth Court, and Carleton Place. Yeah.
So the 28 units and 44 chambers will be people who are coming off the wait list.
That's correct.
Lindsay?
Just a comment on making recommendation to council. Emily stated that, you know, about 30 additional spaces could be managed right now within Lanark County, within their organization. So I think if we crafted wording to reflect that this organization that currently exists can take on this load at $3,200 a person, that's I think a really well put forward recommendation to council, because we have a service provider in the area who's saying that they have the capacity to take on that amount too. And I think it's just also worth noting that the amount is much larger than that, but without extending resources, that 30 additional spaces can be made. And so that the number should proportionally represent at least 30 more spaces at $3,200 a year, and start there.
Emily, I mean, that would be based on the average. And I suppose you work with a fixed dollar amount within your budget, correct? And then you'll fill as many spaces as you can based on the formulas and the applicants, right? Okay. Oh, you're muted, Emily.
Sorry. If it was a fixed amount of, let's say, 100,000, we would start adding people to the program. So you may get to 29 or you may get to 31. It's hard to say exactly how many would make it there. And I just want to point out that this would be dependent on county council approval.
Thank you. Okay, who would like to make a recommendation?
I can make it. I want to make a recommendation to council for well, at least $150,000 to be allocated and set aside to go towards rent subsidy benefits.
Okay, Lorraine?
I just wonder, Lindsay, if you would care if it said 1% for the reason that the mayor said already, because that way it will go up automatically. You know, otherwise it will stay at the amount you make it, the motion will stay at that amount.
Fair, fair. And 1% equals how much?
Well, it does that now. What you said,
Okay.
I think that's shy.
Yeah, maybe 1.5, but no, 1% of the budget to be allocated. And yeah, and an agreement too. I mean, recognizing, you know, all this new housing that will come into effect, that property tax income will be rising significantly over the next several years and even immediately into the end of 2022. So that is promising as well.
Okay. Carrie,
Yes, Mayor Panko.
you're the master at drafting resolutions. Laws, and how would you wordsmith? You've heard the discussion today.
Yep.
How would you wordsmith a?
So I was kind of wordsmithing it as Lindsay was talking. And I made it very simple and put that 1% of council, and I mean, I'll jazz it up, you know, council of Town of Smith Falls, of council's 2022 budget be allocated to, no, and Lindsay said rent subsidy benefits first, and then I added for Smith Falls residents. Did we want it to say rent subsidy benefits, or did we just want to?
Yeah, portable housing benefit, I think is the right, would be the suitable expression.
Okay. For residents of Smith Falls, I just kind of left it very simple. We're just looking for that.
Yeah,
from
and I would say 1% of tax revenue, because our budget would be over 30,000, right? I think counting water, wastewater, and government grants and everything else that comes in.
One quick question just on this too. And after this recommendation, can we please recommend? I know Emily, you've referenced that you're currently working with HS and collecting data. You know, I still think it's worth at minimum raising the issue right now, council, putting it on the radar, and letting them know that we think that this is a high priority issue. And I mean, honestly, council should be making decisions based off of real data. So I just think we can recommend that council consider exploring options at this point to collect accurate data for 2022. How they go about doing that is another thing, but I think we need to put that in writing as well.
Yeah, that sounds very reasonable, and we're hopeful that the county's initiative may answer those questions, but if it doesn't, then we would have to take another step forward. Okay, Joanne, you had another comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it's stipulated that it was for the Town of Smith Falls, but Carrie has put that in. And also I wanted to clarify with Emily, the study that is being done at county, you will be sharing the results with Smith Falls, right? So could we not put that in our, like, as a support to have this budget line continue? In January, we'll be doing we'll have a better data collection, and we'll be able to represent this budget line in a more accurate. Like, if we also stipulate that there is some data that will be coming to council, that maybe that could help with getting the approval.
So to that, I guess, if you can read what you have proposed, and I will just add a comment based on Joanne's.
Sure. Just sending you a text, Mayor Panko.
Okay.
Again, I just very simply, and it was one that, like I said, I went on what Lindsay was saying, that 1% of tax revenue be committed by Council of the Town of Smiths Falls for an affordable housing benefit for the residents of Smiths Falls.
And that the town of Smiths Falls pursue opportunities to
Oh, yes. And that
quantify.
the council direct staff to explore opportunities to get accurate data for future decisions.
There, yeah.
Something like that.
Okay. Would someone like to move?
Note, Mayor Panko, I don't know if you were in the email chain with CAO Morris earlier, but earlier last week, but we've been looking for updated data as well. And StatsCan has put out some of their most recent statistical data. However, the stuff that we were looking for will be released in February. So I don't know if any of that data will assist us or not, but Lindsay's point's well taken, because as staff, we're always looking for whether we use MPAC's numbers or whether we use Stats Canada's numbers, and then we get the election roll mixed in there sometimes, and so it's a great point. Many municipalities struggle with it.
Yeah, very real challenge, especially during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Okay. Would someone like to move that motion?
Really quick, I just wanted to know, is affordable housing subsidies like fancy talk for rent?
Say again, Vicky, please.
Is affordable housing subsidies fancy talk for rent? Is this all like this
Yeah,
line?
yeah, portable housing benefit as has been described.
Perfect, thank you, sorry.
So be payable to the recipient, not to a landlord, and we follow the model that has been established. Okay, so it's moved by Courtney, seconded by Vicky. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so we've got maximum 8 minutes here. Lindsay, anything further on stigma of tenants on rent subsidies, or did you sort of cover that with your comments earlier?
I was just going to say, are we doing a Christmas party? Yeah, it's something. So I was at Lanark County Housing. I've been there a bit this week, just having some chats with Shauna and a few other people there. There's a,
Thanks, Emily.
There's a huge stigma. And I think, I'm probably going to do a bit of like grassroots discussions with people who I know in the area who are newer landlords building. I am close acquaintances with a few of the developers that are coming into town who I actually think are really good people. And they're just so busy and good, all good sense. It's not that they don't care. And so, I think the more maybe current landlords who work with various organizations reach out to other landlords, that's probably a best approach. But, there's a lot of things that we need to be doing in terms of just information sharing. And I think, again, another thing is just perhaps creating, brochures, again, highlighting actually benefits of working with various organizations. And, Sean and I have discussed a lot of how you can create pretty inexpensive housing that's still good housing to just meet some immediate needs, so that you don't have to borrow as much and the cost of construction isn't as much. There are a lot of local retail providers in town who I've been talking with on various other projects who are willing to provide materials at cost if they know it's going towards a project that will be for the community's benefit. But yeah, there's certainly a lot of stigma. I would say every single tenant I've dealt with right now who receives assistance has been very fearful every time when they have to tell me where their rent comes from, to the point where they shake when they disclose it. And it sucks to see, because there's so much fear. So I don't know, there's probably many steps, but I think that's part of the conversation we need to be having, just even as various people in business in the town, just constantly communicating. It's a good thing, and it doesn't mean anything different. The people aren't any different. And then as well, one thing that we've done on Phillip Street, which there's a lot of historical reference to this, but if you're on welfare or any kind of social assistance, it doesn't mean you deserve the basement apartment. You deserve just as nice of an apartment as anyone else. And I would say that everyone we brought in on fill up, we let them know what units were available and they chose. So they have a top floor with a balcony, a main floor. Some chose the basement, great. But you know, when it comes to the stigma around that, mixed housing is the healthiest housing. And also just because someone's on welfare doesn't mean that they get the basement apartment.
Thanks, Lindsay. And I think your comment just helped remind us that we have a lot of work to do yet. This advisory committee's work is far from finished. Okay, mandatory accessible housing update. Just to give a brief update there, Carl had reached out to our legal counsel to see if we could bring in any manner that would require universally accessible units in new developments, going beyond simply the barrier-free requirements of the Ontario Building Code today. Carl, do you want to? You haven't had a chance to say anything today. We got about a couple minutes here, but do you want to just bring Tony's comments to the group?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to confirm, our solicitor, Tony Fleming, had advised the municipality does not have the authority under the Planning Act to create zoning or official plan regulations that deal with the interior of buildings and how buildings are developed. So that's not, unfortunately, we don't have the ability to create a sort of inclusive zoning framework for accessibility. Obviously, the conversations that this committee have had and the council has, I believe, sent a motion to the ministry with respect to building code upgrades is probably the best approach to go. However, our lawyer did highlight the possibility of a community improvement plan to incent accessible housing, and that is something that has worked its way into our RFP document for the CIP.
And I think the second piece of that, I guess, Carl, I don't have it in front of me, but under the Human Rights Code, there is a potentially a loophole there. Are we familiar with that? Oh, Courtney might be. Go ahead, Courtney.
So I'm not really familiar with that, but just one comment I kind of wanted to make was like, with the building code and stuff, like there's codes where you have to build a unit to this certain aspect or whatever, but like it's catering able-bodied people, and it's kind of like discriminatory to disabled people, because you're saying for a barrier-free unit you only get access to part of your house, but if you're an able-bodied person, hey, you get access to the whole house. But because you're disabled, you only need access to one bedroom and kitchen area, one bathroom. Like it's just it's not fair and it's not right. Like they're stripping us of our basic rights. It's how is that it? How?
Well,
I don't get how we can enforce that, how we can't say no. If you are making an accessible unit, everything inside has to be accessible. How can we not do that?
Well, thanks, Courtney. And so we have sent that to the minister. We also circulated the resolution we passed to every municipality in Ontario. And hopefully we start to get some traction on this, but your point is so well taken. And now, Carl, I think there is a development. We just approved the night, and you mentioned there will be some fully accessible units within that. Am I correct?
Yes, the developer at the corner of 7 Maple and William has recently obtained site plan approval for 33 residential units there, and again, we can't force the developer to exceed code requirements. We can certainly give a suggestion. We can give a hint and float that idea, but we can't force it and condition it as a part of planning approval. However, he has advised that they have exceeded the minimum code requirements in a number of ways as far as barrier-free access to and through to and through the units to make them more usable than what the code requires. You're absolutely right, Courtney.
And Courtney, in a sense, I think you had an influence on that. As you know, the builder. Anyway, I know we've got more to talk about, but it is 3 o'clock, and I know that staff do have to jump on to other meetings. So we will have to wrap up here, but we've got a full agenda for our next meeting. And we're 3 o'clock. We'll send out a meeting notification before the end of the week, I think, with regards to our next date. But thanks everyone for all your participation today. I know we had a lot to cover, but I think the most meaningful topic that we had to deal with was dealt with effectively, and hopefully it leads to real positive change. Thanks everyone, and everyone have a Merry Christmas if I don't see you before then.